Hey, have you ever wondered what animals can teach us about showing up as our original selves at work? Well, I've thought about it a lot because I've been a veterinarian for almost 3 decades. And what fascinates me about the pets and the animals that I work with is that they show up originally as themselves. They don't apologize, they don't pretend they're somebody else. And it works for them and it works for us because we know what we're dealing with. We know how to work around their unique personality and their foibles. And I wondered how we can apply this to being a leader and to showing up at work as ourselves. So if you think about it, imagine a raven. Ravens are playfully curious. They don't worry about what people are going to think of them. They're really just curious about the world, and that's helped them with their survival. Now, if you're a curious person at work or you manage a curious person, you might be irritated by their curiosity. Maybe like, why are we doing it that way? Why don't we do it this way? Have we thought about doing that way? Oh my goodness, we just need to get through this new initiative and move forward. So often curiosity can be perceived as a negative trait when we're dealing with the workplace. But if you think about it, curiosity can be leveraged for good. So how can we show up with curiosity and how can we lead others so that they maintain their curiosity? I remember working and I was very curious about a company I was working for and I kept getting shut down. I gave up. I stopped worrying about how to make things better. I just worked within the framework of what I was given because I knew they didn't care anyway. I was just an irritation, an inconvenience. Maybe you can relate to that. How could we take our curiosity and the curiosity of our team members and use it for a superpower like the raven does? No one out curious is the raven. They look under rocks, they check into cars. They're always curious about the world around them, which helps them survive. So, how can we help people bring out their curiosity more so that it's not an inconvenience or an irritation, but it actually builds innovation and problem solving? So, that's the raven. The second animal that I believe can help us channel more success at work is the golden retriever. You know, that excitable dog that's just always jumping and running around. And sometimes it's exhausting, but that's the golden retriever's superpower. They're enthusiastic and they love people and they're always ready to jump in. So in the workplace, if you have a golden retriever who's overexcited and always, has high energy, sometimes that can be a bit annoying, right? But how again do we transfer that excitement and that enthusiasm into a force for good? So think about that enthusiastic and energetic person, giving them tasks, giving them projects that they can lead, because it is important to have fun at work. It's important to be enthusiastic. And if we quash that enthusiasm because we find it too much or too annoying, we're just going to build more autonomous robots. And if you want people to be engaged at work, it's important to meet them where they're at. So, meeting a golden retriever where they're at is making sure they have lots of opportunities to use their enthusiasm and use it in a way that helps them feel engaged with their job, helps them feel like they have purpose, and that they're appreciated for their unique contribution and they're not just considered annoying. The third animal is the bear. Nice. Think of a nice grizzly bear hanging out in a meadow, just chomping down on buffalo berries or saskatoons. The bear knows the value of rest. And the bear knows when it's time to stop and smell the roses and eat the berries. And this is an important part of creativity. If you want innovation and you want people to think of new ways to solve problems in your organization, you need to know that the bear is part of that. So, a person working in an organization that's like the bear might seem a little lazy, might seem a bit of a daydreamer and complacent, but in that daydreaming space is when we can think of the most amazing and brilliant ideas. So many of us are packed so tightly with this get it done culture and that we're not achieving unless our calendar is full and our inbox is at zero. But it's important to make sure that we have that time and take that time like the bear does to relax and look at the clouds and allow our default mode network to start to solve some of those problems happening in the background. If you have a bear on your team, who might just seem like they want to daydream too much, it's important to give them some structure. Allow them that time to daydream, but do it strategically in a way that helps them to solve some problems. Plant a seed of a problem you're trying to solve. Say, hey, I'm thinking of a new way we can reach our customer in this market, and allow them to daydream on that idea. It's important to give people that space and room to daydream. It doesn't mean they're lazy. It just means they're working on different things. I'm not saying they don't have to do their job, but it just means how can we create an environment where they are able to express their superpower skill of imagining how the world could be different, because that's where innovation starts. The next animal I want to talk about is really one that underscores this importance of adaptability and how can we thrive through all this change that's happening and adapt more quickly. So the first one is the kitty cat, the cat. Now, well, most cats like to sleep and they like to observe. If you know any cat that likes to jump up on the top of a refrigerator and just stand there perched watching everybody, cats are calm observers of the world. What they can do is they don't react like the golden retriever does, but they sit and they watch and they react when necessary. So that can be seen as a negative trait because, again, it might be seen as either being lazy or not active or not being engaged. But when you have a cat type person on your team, first of all, don't pet their belly because cats hate that and get scratched. The other thing is that it's important to allow them that time to observe. So, for instance, a brainstorming idea is to stand, the most creative person or the boss stands at the whiteboard and everybody's got to scream their ideas out. That won't work for the cat or the calm observer or someone who might be a bit more introverted. It's important to consider those types of people that they might have really good ideas, but they don't want to yell them out in a brainstorming session for golden retrievers. So give them that space and time to reflect so that they can think and consider and deliberate about the data that they're giving, because often they have really good ideas, but because they're not reacting right away and not shouting them out, they can be perceived as being less innovative, less engaged. That's not necessarily true. The other animal that's very adaptable is the Belgian Malinois. And if you haven't seen these dogs in action, make sure you Google them. These are the dogs that will run up a wall and jump and grab a ball from hanging from a ceiling. Belgian Malinois are incredibly focused and determined. These are the athletes and the animals that are on search and rescue, and they will jump in a river and save somebody. And they have incredible focus and drive. Now, this can be a little off-putting because they're so intense, but a Malinois doesn't apologize for her intensity. She knows that she needs that intensity and that drive to get the hard work that she's doing done. So conversely, when you have somebody who is very focused and determined and maybe a little bit assertive in your workplace, it can be a little off-putting because sometimes they can be a little much, especially if they're coming up against the calm observing cat. Bring a Malinois into your office and see all the calm cats run up to the top of the refrigerator. So if you have a Malinois, it's important to, again, give them boundaries and give them a structure, but also give them an opportunity to really go for it and really take a chance and use that focus to advance an initiative or an innovative practice, because they will not disappoint you if you're pointing them in the right direction. Just don't ask them to snooze on your lap. The last animal and that I feel like supports this important concept of adaptability is the sugar glider. The sugar glider is that little animal that just jumps in the air and glides down to the next tree or to the ground. Being a sugar glider is important, and knowing when you can jump and having confidence in your abilities to find your way down. So people who are like sugar gliders are often jumping into new things. Maybe you feel like they're not evaluating the risks adequately. Maybe you feel like they're impulsive, but channeling this sugar glider is helpful to move initiatives forward, because if you give them an opportunity to take the baton and run with it, they will take a risk to jump and to try something new. And while we need to evaluate risk mitigation and know what the downside is to jumping, it's important to have those people that can help your team along so that you can jump into a new initiative, accept a change in software or a new technique or a new SOP. So making sure you leverage those sugar gliders and don't think of them as mavericks and don't think of them as troublemakers, but channel that willingness to jump into taking small risks to move innovation forward in your organization. The other ways animals show up to to help us understand how we can show up better as ourselves at work is in their authentic power and their unapologetic contribution. Think about a Chihuahua. Chihuahuas don't care if you don't like their attitude because that's just the way they are. And Chihuahuas show this tenacity of spirit and this willingness to get things done and not tolerate any crap, and they'll tell you. So in a workplace, a Chihuahua might be somebody who can be a little abrupt and rude and maybe seems like not a great team player. But at the end of the day, these people might just be so focused on excellence that they are just showing their irritation and showing their dissatisfaction with everybody else around them. So how can we channel that? Well, it's important to make sure that people are not rude or that there's acceptable behaviors and civility happening. But underneath that grumpiness and that like that snarly, bitey Chihuahua personality is somebody who really just has that strength and perseverance of spirit to get things done. So make sure you channel that, give them something to do, allow them to hide in the back room and just knuckle down and get their work done, and appreciate that that's what they're doing. The other animal that I like to talk about with a radical authenticity is the meerkat. This is little animals in the savannah where they just sit and one of them is always on alert and the rest of them are living in their little holes. These meerkats are a bit of the sky is falling kind of animal. They might seem overly paranoid or nervous. They might seem like they're making a big deal out of nothing, like there's nobody in the sky already. But a meerkat survives because they've delegated these sentinels to watch out for predators. And if you have somebody in your organization like a meerkat, you might feel like they're tentative, they're slow to act, or overly cautious. And they're kind of the counterpoint to the sugar glider. Now, if the sugar glider is jumping with no checks and rigor and they're kind of just doing what they want, it could end up costing a lot of money if their initiatives are not well thought out. It could end up causing risk and harm to organizations. So the meerkat is the counterpoint to that sugar glider. And the meerkat is our sentinel to make sure that we're not rushing into something that has disastrous consequences. So if you have a meerkat on your team, it's important to include them in the problem-solving process, not so that they can hold things up and block progress, but you can ask them, like, what are some things what are the pre-mortem, so to speak? Like, what are some of the worst things that could happen? And how can we mitigate these and how can we reduce the risk of these large consequences from happening? So instead of getting stressed and irritated with the meerkat, if you're someone who likes to jump and likes to try new things, the meerkat is there to help us watch our risk and make sure that the consequences are not too deep. One of the things that is important for humans is that we have these instincts that we don't realize are often holding us back from expressing our own original selves. Think about the Japanese macaque. Have you ever seen that picture of them sitting in the hot tub? Japanese macaques might be perceived as rebellious, nonconformist, troublemakers, don't listen to rules. They don't conform. And if you have somebody like a Japanese macaque in your organization, they can be labeled a troublemaker. They're the ones that are doing things without telling anybody because they know it's not the right thing to do. But they're doing it because it's getting their work done the way it needs to be done. I remember working in an organization and I wanted to get some software in to do a task that we needed to do in our department. And I had a contact who was dragging it. Nothing was getting done. Finally, I just did it and I didn't ask for permission. And that I'm not proud of it. But how do you allow Japanese macaques and nonconformists to help you move through innovation and think of new ideas while also balancing that with the meerkat's expertise and looking and the cat's calm observation so that we can look at a holistic view of our innovations. And so there's not putting you at risk because I will tell you, if you have a nonconformist in your organization, like a macaque, they will probably do something without telling you, but in the goal of getting their work done. So if you can channel that and give them guidelines that they can work within, you would be amazed at the innovations and the productivity increases they can do. Another way to show up authentically at work is like the Kia parrot. I love New Zealand. I've been a couple of times, and there's this alpine parrot called the Kia, and they are the cheekiest, naughtiest birds you will ever come across. If you park your car, they will come and they'll strip the windshield wipers off and the ceiling around your windows, and they're so curious, and they are so confident, and they will experiment with anything. And how can we at work find somebody who's a bit naughty and cheeky? And how can we channel that to maybe help improve morale in our organization, to bring some humor and levity, and also to allow a little bit of space for them to experiment and try? That's how the Post-it note was invented. I know it's a bit cliche, but it was because the 3M employees were given some time to work on an innovation or something that interested them. And that's how the 3M Post-it note came to be. So how can you allow your curious Kias to look into something that interests them, to share, to follow their curiosity like the raven, and find some new ways of working and collaborating and getting that energy up to help other people do the same? Because creativity is contagious. If someone is able to express themselves and to look into some unusual ways of working, it gives other people the power to do the same. Now, I'm not saying now you might be thinking like, that sounds like chaos. We don't want to just let everybody do what they want. But if you can allow each of those animals or those avatars for animals in your organization to lean into their superpower, whether it's the calm observation of a cat or the sentinel watch of the meerkat or the drive and focus of the Malinois. It's important to allow each of those types of people to channel their superpower for something good, because a lot of times we see these qualities as a negative, and they don't have to be. So let me know what you think. Which animal are you? Which animal drives you the craziest? I would say for me, it's the meerkat because I'm more of a Malinois slash sugar glider slash Japanese macaque. So I would love to know, what animal do you think you are? Do you agree with me? Can you see that we can hold this paradox of qualities can be either negative and distracting, or they can actually be turned into a positive force? Let me know.